The final year, 7 small changes that may seem harmless, but aren't. It started with little things: a nap that stretched longer than usual, a quiet dinner where hardly anything was touched, a conversation that trailed off before the sentence ended. Nothing that screamed alarm, nothing that felt like a crisis, just small changes, subtle ones. The kind you shrug off at first because they don't come with flashing lights or emergency signals. You tell yourself they're tired, they're aging, they're just having an off day. Maybe the weather, maybe they didn't sleep well, maybe they're distracted. There's always a reason to not worry. Until those reasons begin to feel like excuses we tell ourselves to avoid facing something harder. That's how it happened with my grandfather. He was always the quiet type, but this was different. He began fading in ways that were hard to name. His stories got shorter, his steps a little slower. He'd hand me old photos, say things like, "You should keep this," and I'd laugh it off, tell him we had plenty of time. I didn't realize at the time, those moments weren't random. They were his way of beginning to say goodbye. No, one teaches you how to recognize the end when it doesn't look dramatic, when it doesn't come with hospital beds or sudden falls. Sometimes, the final year of someone's life arrives like a whisper. And if you're not paying close attention, you might miss the most important moments of all. That's what this video is really about. Not to frighten you, not to overwhelm you, but to invite you to notice the sacred in the subtle, to pay attention to those quiet changes that may seem harmless, but aren't. Because often, by the time something feels serious, we've already missed the chance to be fully present in the moments that mattered most. This isn't about turning you into a detective or making you worry about every nap or forgotten name. It's about helping you see that in the final season of someone's life, the body and spirit begin to communicate differently. Quieter, yes, but no less clearly. There's a grace in knowing what to look for. It won't stop the tide from coming, but it might help you meet it with open arms instead of regret. To listen more closely, to hold their hand just a little longer, to recognize that what looks like a small change on the surface might be a sacred sign of something deeper unfolding underneath. And when you know that, you show up differently. You stop waiting for the right moment and start treating this moment, this quiet, ordinary, precious moment, as exactly what it is: a gift. Fatigue in the final year doesn't shout. It doesn't come in sudden crashes or dramatic collapses. Instead, it tiptoes in. A few more yawns during the day, a longer sit in the armchair, a nap that turns into hours. At first, you might even welcome it. They deserve the rest, you think. They've earned it. And that's true. But there's a difference between rest that restores and rest that signals something deeper. In the last stretch of life, the body begins a quiet retreat. Systems that once worked like clockwork slow down, not because of disease necessarily, but because the body knows, in ways our minds often don't, that it's nearing the end of its journey. Energy becomes a limited resource. The body becomes wise in its conservation, pulling back, preserving, preparing. They'll tell you they're just tired. They might smile and brush it off. And maybe they are. But if you look closely, you'll see the tired is different. It lingers. It doesn't lift after sleep. It drapes itself over them like a weight that doesn't want to be shaken. They might still want to get up and do things, but the energy simply isn't there. Even simple tasks, watering plants, folding laundry, walking to the mailbox, become mountains where there used to be molehills. What makes this shift easy to miss is its subtlety. It doesn't happen overnight. It creeps in. A day here, a week there. One missed activity, one postponed visit. And because we love them, we want to believe it's just temporary. Maybe it is. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's the body's way of asking for stillness. The hardest part? They might not even realize it themselves. They're not faking. They're not being lazy. They're not giving up. Their body is simply telling them, and you, that it's slowing down, that it needs more rest, more softness, more grace. The best thing you can do is honor that, not fight it, not push them to be more active or guilt them into routines. Instead, bring presence into the quiet. Sit beside them during the nap. Let the silence be a shared space. Bring them tea without asking questions. Offer help before they ask. And when they say they're tired, believe them. Sometimes that tiredness is the soul's way of stepping gently toward peace. And when you meet it with love, you turn those final moments into something sacred instead of something scary. There's a silence that falls over some elders in their final year. It's not dramatic or hostile. It's not the silence of anger or confusion. It's softer than that. It's the silence of turning inward, of slowly, quietly letting go of the outer world and making peace with the inner one. You'll notice it in conversations. Where they used to offer thoughts or opinions, they now just nod. Where they once called every week, now it's every few weeks, or not at all. They're still here, but less invested in the daily dance of social connection. They laugh less at small talk. They don't seem as bothered by things they used to complain about. You might even find them just sitting, looking out the window, not bored, not asleep, just still. At first, you might think they're upset or depressed or lonely. And it's true. Sometimes withdrawal can be a cry for connection. But in the final season of life, withdrawal can also be a kind of wisdom, a preparation, a quiet internal shift where the soul begins to detach from the noise of the world to focus on what really matters. Memory, meaning, peace. They might stop attending gatherings. They might not answer calls. They might no longer want to watch TV or follow the news. These aren't signs of disinterest. They're signs of realignment. The small matters no longer matter. They're sifting through the important things, the eternal things. What they often need during this time isn't cheerleading or convincing, it's presence. Just be near. You don't have to fix the silence. Sometimes sitting next to someone in a quiet room is the most loving thing you can do. Your presence tells them they're not disappearing, that they're not alone in the stillness. And if they do open up, then even briefly, listen, really listen. Because the words they choose in those final chapters often carry more weight than entire conversations from years ago. There's clarity in their simplicity. There's love in their restraint. The withdrawal is not a rejection of life. It's a gentle farewell to its distractions. A soft, slow turning inward. And when we honor it instead of fearing it, we make space for the kind of connection that doesn't always need words to be real. It's easy to dismiss. A smaller portion at dinner. A few bites left untouched. The soft, "I'm not really hungry tonight," said without concern. You might chalk it up to a bad mood, a late lunch, or something that will pass by tomorrow. But when this happens again, and again, and again, something deeper may be speaking through that empty plate. In the final year of life, one of the quietest and most misunderstood changes is the loss of appetite. It's not usually dramatic. There's no grand announcement. Just a gentle turning away from food, as if the body itself is starting to say, "I don't need as much anymore." Biologically, this makes sense. As the systems in the body begin to slow, the need for calories and nutrients diminishes. Digestion takes energy, and the body, wise as ever, starts conserving effort. The hunger signals fade, the cravings vanish. And while it can be terrifying for loved ones to witness, for the person experiencing it, it may not feel alarming at all. It just feels natural. What's hard is watching someone who used to love meals, who used to light up at the smell of your cooking or savor every bite, now pick at food or decline it entirely. You start to worry. You think, if they eat more, they'll feel better. And so you coax, you plead, you offer all their favorites. But they still shake their head with that same gentle response. "I'm okay." Here's the truth that might bring you peace. Sometimes they really are okay, just not in the way we define it. Their body is simply entering a different rhythm, one that no longer requires what it once did. And when we let go of the idea that feeding them is the same as saving them, we allow space for dignity and compassion to take the lead. This doesn't mean you should stop offering food. Quite the opposite. Offer, but without pressure. Sit with them, share small things, a few sips of broth, a spoonful of ice cream, a bite of fruit. Let eating become less about nutrition and more about connection, about pleasure, about being together. Because at this stage, what nourishes them most may not be what's on the plate, but who's across the table. There's a drawer we all have in our minds, the one where we keep the little everyday things. Appointments, phone numbers, where we left our glasses, the name of the neighbor's dog. For most of our lives, we open and close that drawer, dozens of times a day without even thinking. Until one day it starts to stick. When someone in their final year begins forgetting things, it often starts small. Repeating a story they told you yesterday. Misplacing keys in the fridge. Forgetting a word mid-sentence and waving it off with a chuckle. These moments can feel harmless, even a little charming at first. But inside you might feel a shift, a quiet concern that something is slipping. It's important to say this. Not every lapse is dementia. The mind, like the body, goes through its own process of slowing and shifting in the final stretch. Memory doesn't vanish. It softens, becomes selective, turns inward. The sharp edges of detail give way to the broad strokes of feeling. They might forget the name of the street they lived on 30 years ago, but remember the way the summer air smelled in that backyard. They might forget the exact date of their anniversary, but not the look on their spouse's face when they said, "I do." This kind of forgetting isn't always confusion. Sometimes it's the mind reorganizing what it wants to hold on to. And then there's the deeper kind. The kind where they seem unsure of what day it is, or what month they lose track of time. They get quiet mid-thought and don't always find their way back. And still, they tell you they're fine. They may be, in their own way. The real question becomes, are you okay with the shift? Because the hardest part isn't their forgetting. It's our grief over being slowly forgotten. It's the ache of seeing pieces of them fade when we still want them whole. It's wanting to shake them into remembering not for their sake but for ours. But memory isn't the only way people show love. Even if they forget the name of your child, they might still light up at their laugh. Even if they can't recall what they ate for breakfast, they may still reach for your hand without needing to remember why. So we learn to let go of the need for perfect clarity. We stop asking, "Do you remember?" and start asking, "How do you feel?" We stop correcting and start connecting, because even if the memories grow faint, your presence still matters. Your love still reaches them. Your voice still soothes. And in the end, it's not what they forget that defines them. It's everything they meant and still mean to you. Would you like me to continue with, they start saying strange, beautiful things, and they suddenly want to give things away? There's a moment in many people's final year, sometimes earlier, sometimes closer to the end, when their words begin to shift. Not in a way that always makes sense to those listening. Not in a way that's clinical or easy to define. But suddenly they begin to say things that sound unusual, poetic, or even a little mysterious. They might start talking about going home, even when they're already in their own house. They might mention needing to pack or refer to a journey or say something like, "I'll be seeing them soon." You ask, "Who?" And they just smile. Or look far off like they're seeing something you can't. They might speak of gardens, of doors, of light. They may talk about family members who passed long ago, as if they were right there in the room. To someone unprepared, it may sound like confusion or hallucination. But hospice nurses and those who've walked closely with the dying often speak of this shift in language, this almost spiritual vocabulary that begins to emerge. These aren't just words, they're signs. Signs that the boundary between this world and whatever comes next is beginning to thin. They may seem at peace when they speak this way, or sometimes unsettled, as if they're wrestling with things only their heart can see. What matters most in those moments isn't that you understand what they mean, it's that you listen, not to the logic, but to the feeling beneath the words. Often when they speak in these ways, what they're really saying is, "I'm preparing to leave, preparing to let go, preparing to meet something else or someone beyond the life they've known." This doesn't mean they're leaving tomorrow. but it does mean something inside them is already beginning the transition. A soul, slowly loosening its grip on this world, often speaks in ways the world can't always decode. So when they begin to say things that sound strange or beautiful, don't rush to correct them. Don't try to pull them back, stay with them there. Ask, "Tell me more about that." Let their words be a window, not a warning. And even if you don't understand everything, let them know you're listening, because sometimes the last things a person says aren't meant to be explained. They're meant to be held with reverence. It might start with something small, a necklace they've worn for years placed gently into your hand with the words, "You should have this," or a faded photo from a dusty drawer held out like a sacred offering. Or they'll call you into the room and point to an old watch, a cookbook, a quilt, and say, "Take it. It's yours now." To you, it might feel too soon. Why now, you wonder? Why this sudden need to part with things they've held on to for so long? But to them, it's not sudden. It's part of the preparation, a deeply intuitive process of handing over pieces of their life while they're still here to see you receive them. These aren't just objects. They are symbols, touchstones of memory, pieces of meaning. And the act of giving them away is a quiet, powerful acknowledgement. My time is winding down. I want to leave these things with someone I love. Sometimes it's practical, settling affairs, making sure things are passed down properly. But often it's emotional. They're not thinking about legal wills or inheritance papers. They're thinking about legacy, about presence, about what will remain when they no longer do. And it's not just the big things. It might be a coffee mug, a sweater, a garden spade, items no one else would notice, but to them and to you carry weight because they hold stories. They've been lived in, touched, worn, loved. To some, this gesture might feel eerie, like they're giving up. But try to see it differently. It's not about surrender. It's about stewardship. They're asking you to carry something forward, to hold a part of them after they're gone. That's not morbid. That's deeply human. So when they start offering things, don't brush it off with, "You don't need to do that right now." Instead, ask them why this item matters. Let them tell the story behind it. Receive it like a gift because that's what it is. And later, when the silence settles and their chair is empty, those small items won't feel like clutter. They'll feel like conversation, like whispers from the past, like hands still, reaching forward to say, "I was here, I loved you, I chose you." Accepting those gifts doesn't mean you're ready to lose them. It just means you're ready to honor their love in a new way, one that will stay with you long after the room grows still. It's one of the final shifts, and often the most profound. A change not in the body, but in the spirit. In the last year, especially in the last few months or weeks, you may notice your loved one beginning to move into a different emotional space. Sometimes they become strangely peaceful, other times strangely restless, and sometimes both. You might walk into the room and see them sitting in stillness, their hands folded, their gaze soft. They might smile at nothing in particular. Their breathing is calm. Their voice when they speak is quiet and intentional. There's a noticeable absence of tension, the kind they carried for years. Worries they once repeated like mantras suddenly stop showing up in conversation. Complaints about aches, politics, weather, even regrets, and they just fade. And you wonder, why are they so calm? That peace can be unsettling. You might even mistake it for giving up. But more often, it's not about surrender, and it's about acceptance. Somewhere deep inside, they've reached a kind of clarity, a sense that the fight is over, that they don't have to hold everything up anymore, that there's something or someone waiting, and they're not afraid. And then there are those who become restless, not in the chaotic way you might expect, but with a kind of internal pacing. They might fidget, shift positions often, insist on changing rooms or wanting to go outside more. They might say they need to go but not know where. Their sleep becomes erratic. They ask for things they've never asked for before. They check the time. They ask about people they haven't seen in years. This isn't always fear. Sometimes it's their soul sorting through its final boxes, trying to finish what needs finishing. tie up threads you didn't even know were loose, say things long held back. Even the body gets involved. Some call it terminal restlessness. Others call it spiritual labor, a kind of final work that must be done before letting go. Both peace and restlessness are signs of movement. The body may be still, but the spirit is transitioning. You may not always understand the reason for either, but you can support both in the same way, by being present. If they're peaceful, sit with them in that quiet. Don't fill it, just share it. If they're restless, don't correct or control. Offer reassurance. Ask open-ended questions. Let them talk, move, rearrange. This isn't about fixing anything. It's about honoring what's unfolding, because whether they are calm or unsettled, it's all part of the same sacred journey. The gradual loosening of this life and the tender approach toward whatever comes next. It's the smallest things that speak the loudest when time begins to grow short. A shorter conversation, a lighter meal, a forgotten name, a quiet sigh that lingers longer than it should. None of these things, alone, would sound any alarm. But together they form a pattern, a whisper, a rhythm that tells you something deep inside them is shifting. The truth is, most people don't leave this world in sudden cinematic moments. Most don't offer dramatic goodbyes or grand speeches. Instead, they begin to step away slowly, gently, like a tide receding from the shore. And if we're not paying attention, we might miss it. But when we do pay attention, when we lean into these subtle changes instead of brushing them off, something beautiful happens. We stop treating time like it's infinite. We stop putting off the words we meant to say. We stop waiting for the right moment and realize that this moment, however ordinary, is the one we've been given. In their final year, our loved ones often become teachers. Not through advice or lectures, but through presence, through their silences, their gestures, their shifts, their letting go. And if we have the courage to slow down and sit with them in that space, we will learn lessons that no book or class could ever teach. We will learn how to listen without interrupting, how to hold hands without needing words, how to be with someone, truly be, without rushing in to fix or change or explain. And we'll begin to understand that love in the final stretch doesn't look like grand gestures. It looks like refilling a cup of tea, sitting in a chair beside the bed, answering the same question 3 times with patience, accepting a keepsake with tears in your eyes, saying, "I'm here," even when they're too tired to respond. If someone you love is showing these small signs, this isn't a call to panic, it's a call to presence, a quiet invitation to make the time that's left, however long or short, full of meaning, connection, and tenderness. Because the end of life is not just about dying. It's about finishing well, about honoring the whole story, and about loving someone so fully that their final chapter, though painful, becomes one of the most sacred chapters of your own. You may not be able to change the outcome, but you can shape the experience, and in the end, that might be the most powerful thing of all.